Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Bioshock Survivor difficulty Brass Balls walkthrough. We're in Point Prometheus, and this is my least favourite part of the game. So do not fear, the difficulty here is tantamount to what you've been experiencing for most of the game. I think it's probably agreeable that Bioshock is at its most challenging at the beginning, because you don't have the tools, you don't have the gear, you don't really have the experience, you don't have a lot of the assets that are going to help your life become easier. By the time you get to where we are right now, you have a steady amount of experience under your belt, you have a lot of weapons, a lot of tools, a lot of assets, and you have built your player to perform how you prefer him to perform. And at this point, me telling you what to do is more sundry than anything else, because you don't need it. But there are a couple of things that I can still prescribe that will hopefully help you have a better time. So if you're unaware of the progression of this game and what is expected of the player at this point, we're now going to be becoming a Big Daddy. And I apologise if that spoiled anything for you, but this game is old now, guys, and if you've not played it, you really owed it to yourself to do so beforehand. And if you're watching a walkthrough for it this deep and expecting not to be spoiled, then it makes me worry about your ability to conduct yourself in human interaction and the world in general, because you're going to get spoilers if you were on a video about the video game. It's just how it works. And I get so many people who comment, who lament the fact that I've spoiled things, and all I can think of is fuck off. But I don't say that because I try to conduct myself a little bit better than that. I used to be much worse when I first started, but every so often my patience does dwindle. But for the most, I will generally say, why are you watching this if you don't want to be spoiled? You know, you can't expect me to talk 100% about things that aren't in some way going to cause friction with you. You know, for all you know, I might talk about the game that you're playing at the very point that you're playing it and spoil it before you can get to the point. You know, I talk about everything on my videos, that's my commentary style, and it sucks that I spoil things for people, but there also has to be some measure of control and some measure of fault here laid on themselves, because when you come to these videos, and I mention that I'm going to start talking about something, that's your cue to turn off, but they don't, so instead they just have a go at me, and I'm not going to change, guys, because I'm not doing anything wrong. These are my videos, and I consume them, and I produce them in the way that I want to, and that just so happens that every so often there might be something that's going to ruin your day. But if you don't want Game of Thrones spoilers, stay off the internet. If you don't want to know who won at the most recent UFC, don't go on Twitter. You know, it's simple things that people forget to do. But we're about to become a Big Daddy. And this is a slow process of moving through this area. And you'll notice in this area that the leadhead splicers, I think they're called, the ones with the guns, have got a massive upgrade. A massive, massive upgrade. They're going to be taking so much damage, it's kind of obnoxious. And I do not remember hard having such a steep increase, because I watched some hard the other day, and people were putting them down really quickly with the crossbow, and I do not put them down quickly at all with my crossbow, so the difference is palpable. So you're definitely going to feel the difficulty here, and be very careful of this room. This room, not only does it have 2 turrets, but it has a Big Daddy that likes to cock block the door, and if you stand behind him, you can have nitro splicers, or melee splicers, sorry, who run through the Big Daddy, punch you, and if you have that electric shock ability on, you can shock the Big Daddy, aggro him, and it turns into an absolute nightmare very quickly. So just bear this in mind and be careful, as I use trap bolts instead of traditional bolts, which is why my damage was so severely lacking just then. There's a Houdini just popping in the room. Try and get the headshot, put it down. Hopefully the turrets, if you've hacked them, will do the job. And this is a dense area too. It is a sequence of rooms with a lot of traps, a lot of splicers, and a lot of Big Daddies. And we're at the point now where I'm not even going to bother killing the Big Daddies, because I have a stockpile of Adam and nothing to use it on. And I didn't realise just how much Adam you spend on those life upgrades, because without them, I find myself with an abundance of Adam and no real clear choices of what I want. And I always find that to be a little disappointing in video games, because I really like the idea of making sacrifices. And it's a mechanic that some games do really well and some games do poorly. I don't want there to be one dominant skill that everybody picks. I don't want stopping power or juggernaut. Oftentimes, stopping power. You only wore jug to counter snipers, didn't you, for the most? Like, it shouldn't have one thing that is so much better than everything else that none of the other things get selected. Titanfall 2 is a game that suffers by this. There are so many kits for the Titans, but there's generally one that you will use and the rest you will ignore. You know, like, when you are using Tone, if you aren't using the upgraded defensible wall, why are you using Tone? And I've experimented with all of them, and I kind of liked, you know, the extra missiles for a little bit, and I experimented with the crits and things, but the wall is so powerful. It's literally the reason why Tone is as strong as she is, because she has the ability to negate damage. She can use it offensively, she can use it defensively, and it regenerates way quicker than potentially it should. So it's one piece of kit out of a selection of maybe 4, but there's no reason to ever use anything else. You know, it's really strange. And it's similar to the perk where there's low profile. Low profile is so powerful in Titanfall, especially if you're up against players who are quite experienced in that kind of game, who are using expensive headsets to hear everything, who pay attention, who have got really good eyes and good gun skill. That is the perk they're always going to run, because it gives you the most advantages of staying unseen. And everything else is like hover actively hurts you, like ledge climbing or hanging on the edge actively hurts you because the game's about movement. There's only the showing where people died that's even remotely arguable for that spot. And when you have low profile, you get a benefit while rodeoing, and you spend more time rodeoing than you do a lot of things if the enemy team has a lot of Titans. And then, of course, it hides your jump jets, which makes you a much more quieter character. Gets rid of the trails. It's just, there's no arguing. And I don't really like that, because to me, it should always be a situational thing. Bioshock, for the most, has a lot of really good things, but it also has a lot of shit that you never use. And I think one of the things that the second game doesn't get enough praise for is the way that they expanded on the combat. I don't know why I'm still using these trap bolts. I think I'm saving them. Saving the main ones and just using these. Because here's a little thing when it comes to trap bolts. If you hit them direct impact with a trap bolt, it does diminish damage of a bolt shot. It does about 1/3 of the average damage, I think. It might even be more than that. But if you hit them with the electricity that then extends from the bolt, it's way more powerful. So it's one of those things where if you can use this weapon creatively, you can make the electricity work for you. But I would never really ever recommend that you use trap bolts over the normal bolts, because you get enough ammunition for you to consistently keep using it, and it's one of the highest DPS guns in the game if you're going to use the shoot cancelling to cancel the reload. There's a Houdini who's knocking about. There's an explosive as we push onto the second floor and continue to fight Houdinis, who have got another upgrade, but they do good damage, Houdinis, but they're not that dangerous because you can side strafe a lot of what they've got. And you don't even have to do it at any kind of really good precise time. You can just alternate between left and right and they will struggle to hit you. It's an interesting game, this. I think it's aged really well, but I think this level in itself has aged the least. So we have to find certain components to become a big daddy. And I'm going to do this in the worst possible way you can do it, guys. So reverse the order in which I get things. Do not do the first one first, or you will hate it as much as I do. Because I get the helmet first. And if you don't know, when you get the Big Daddy helmet, it severely affects your HUD. It's going to make it look like you're looking through a fisheye lens, and it's going to obscure the outset corners of the screen. And I am personally a player, I use all of my screen. The higher the FOV, the better. I am absolutely in love, as a console peasant, with this PC idea of increased FOVs, because it enables me to see more at any given moment, and it makes the game appear faster. So anything that makes games look faster, feel faster, and let me see more, it's just gravy. That's the kind of shit that I want. That's the reason why I bought a 144Hz monitor that I never use for games. You know, it's the reason why I've got a £200 headset, because I like having that extra bit. And when you put on that Big Daddy helmet, it's all gone. It becomes so frustrating. It's not even funny. And I'm not even sugarcoating. This is not me being hyperbolic in any way. This is straight up how I feel when I was recording this game. I did not do a practice run for this game. Normally, I'll do a one run through and then I will do the recording for the guide so that I can practice my aim, I can get back into the gist of the game, and I can understand what works. I can learn strategies, things like that. When it's a game I know as well as this one, I just kind of hoped that when I started playing, it would all fall back into place, because I beat this a lot when I was younger. And it did. When I got to this level, and I put on that Big Daddy helmet, I wanted to stop recording the guide. I wanted to stop playing the game. I wanted to delete it off my hard drive. That's how passionately vehement I was against it when it went on. And it's funny because I'm funny. And I realise this as I get older, that I am very picky in a lot of ways. And it's not just in the way that I critique a game or the way that I hold it and I analyse its flaws and I tell you how it could be better and things like that. That is something I enjoy to do because it's fascinating to see what people like and what people don't like. But just picky in life in general. The smallest, slightest differences can affect me quite largely. And a lot of it is probably just neurosis. Definitely stems from that. It could be shades of the autism spectrum, things along those lines. But there are just moments where I can't even tell you why it bothers me as much as it does, because logically it's such a small difference, but that difference to me is a night and day difference in my brain. And it's the way that I perceive the game playing. And you wouldn't think, would you, just obscuring your view by making you look through like a porthole and adding those Gaussian blur, like stretching, warping effects on the sides would affect my enjoyment so much. But it did. It affected it largely. And I just wanted to stop. I wanted to stop playing. It made me feel angry when I was playing. And if you're feeling angry when you're playing a game, unless it's competitive multiplayer where you're going to get that if you're competitive, there's no real reason to be angry outside of struggling. If you're angry just because the game is really angering you, unless you're doing it for a specific reason, it's probably time to stop playing that game, or maybe play a different game and have a break. So it was just such a weird feeling to come across the vision that bugged me so greatly, and then it got worse as I see a missile turret and it somehow doesn't blow me up. I wait for it to fire so I can eke out, shock it, and then hack it. There's also a turret behind it. Be very careful, guys. Turrets do a lot of damage, especially if you don't upgrade your life. Wow, you see that? My goodness. That was friendly fire, I think. That one. He blew up the turret I was trying to hack because he was friendly and ended up doing considerable damage to me. Ooh, there's a convenient body, so if you use telekinesis, you can drag the body through the lasers and completely defuse all the lasers, or you can pick up a chair. Chairs work too. It's one way of doing this. Be careful though, because these will do a lot of damage. And it's very easy to get tripped on stuff like that because the depth perception is potentially not the best. But you might be wondering, well, Chris, how can it get worse than this vision thing that affects you so much? Clipping. So one thing that I have lamented throughout this entire walkthrough is that one of the aspects of this game that hasn't aged the best is the clipping. And you've probably gone at some point, I don't feel the same about this criticism. I've not really come across it. I don't really get why you're having such a hard time with it. I'm moving quite fine. And I was the same for all of the game. A handful of moments where I got squashed by a Rosie or a bouncer and I couldn't get around, or a splicer or something. That happens. But when you get in that Big Daddy suit and you're moving through those hollow corridors? Why did I do that? Weird. The brain is a special place, especially mine. But when you're going through those very tight corridors, those alleyways in that museum, guiding the little sister so that she can get Adam, the collision in that area and the clipping is astronomical. It's on a completely new level. It makes Call of Duty Zombies look like you've never got stuck on a zombie once. And if you've ever played COD Zombies, you know that the zombies clipping you is arguably one of the most frustrating aspects of that entire game, and one of the only real reasons why Zombies is so tough, outside of that new one on Infinite Warfare where they've drastically changed how the zombies work, and I managed to get to like wave 20 without even paying attention, which is not how that game's meant to work. It was my first attempt as well, and I was literally watching a film because I just wanted to see what it was all about. I didn't pay too much attention, but they've definitely changed it and it's weird. It's good for the people who struggled with zombies, but the zombie people who put in the time are going to be like, hang on a second, this is weird. But it looks like I got the torso first, so I didn't even get the helmet first, so that's awesome. Just get the helmet last. But you are moving between areas of this facility, picking up parts of the Big Daddy to become him. Then you can essentially seduce the little sister into gathering Adam for you and opening a doorway, and then we can proceed to fight Adam. Adam? Atlas. Can you imagine if you fought Adam and it was some giant slug monster? I've been waiting for you, my child. You had to throw little sisters at it and they had to drain it. That'd be hilarious. Fighting a crazy giant sea slug out on the ocean floor. It was really a parasite controlling Andrew Ryan. Andrew Ryan was a puppet all along like that. Is it Dead Silence? That'd be stupid. Oh, but this bit fucking sucks. I'm so glad we're close to the end, because this level really bugs me in a lot of ways. It's not a bad level either. You know, I sound kind of harsh, don't I, with the way that I'm essentially condemning it, and it's not a bad level, it's just the Big Daddy thing. Why would you... Like, you move pretty slow in this game, let's be fair. If you come off a fast game and you come to this game, you really feel it. Once you play this game for a while and you get used to it, the speed's nominal at that point. But when you become a Big Daddy, you become even clunkier, and everything about it just bugs me. You know, it's one of those strange things, isn't it? This entire series, wow, he was quiet, is about Big Daddies in a lot of ways. They are the heart and soul of the games. And then you become one, and it's meant to be this big power fantasy and this fun sequence, and I just didn't like it. And I know I'm not alone with this sentiment. I know a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of my friends didn't like it. It's that strange thing. And then the second game came out, and I think they made it a lot better. But once again, the second game suffered because, unfortunately, it was more of a retreading than anything else. And even though it definitely increased a lot of mechanics and it made a lot of things play really, really, really well, like the combat in the second game doesn't get enough love because it's just such a more refined, smoother experience. But people don't play Bioshock 4 combat. It's a very small amount of people that do that. You know, I'm one of those people. I loved the story the first time, but I'm not playing it again for story. I'm playing it because I like the way you interact with the moves and the spells and the guns and things, even though technically they're plasmids, not really spells. There's a bunch of D&D guys getting triggered, leaving really angry messages in between the dice rolls. And then the second game just made it really, really great. And if you play the second game for combat alone, it's a fun game. But if you play it from a perspective as just a game and let it stand on its laurels, it's essentially go to area, collect Adam, piss off Big Sister, catch train. That's all you do. And it's really repetitive, and the story's okay, but Minerva's Den's story's way better, and that's a DLC, which is kind of strange, isn't it? As we double check the map here, because I'm not too sure what bit I've not been on. And as of course, if you ever wonder where you haven't been, look for the areas that are greyed out, because it means you have not traversed there yet. The map is a useful tool, even if it looks like it was designed by Escher. So here is the helmet. Here's the moment you were waiting for, guys. Look at it. Look at it. Is it not the most egregious thing you've seen today? It's bugging me now, and I'm not even playing. It bugs me so much. I can't tell you how important periphery vision is apparently to me. You know, I would baffle opticians by how much I appreciate the outer borders of my eyeballs, but I do. and the blur they've got going, that crazy, like, radial, crazy thing, no. Don't like it. I'm going to try not to talk too much about it, guys, because I could probably fill this entire video with lamentations. Just an entire obituary as to why this should not be a thing and why they failed this city. You know, but it's just not good. I think you can see it for yourself as we take on a couple of spider splicers that are doing crazy cartwheels. I really like the spider splicers in this game. In the second game, they just look like a bunch of Goonie monsters, and I didn't appreciate that, with like testicles hanging off their torsos and stuff. It's really goofy. Should have used some grenades. Grenades really powerful, good at putting damage out there, good at catching radius on enemies. But the fight's already over. A lot of people have asked as well, am I going to cover Bioshock 2? I'm probably going to stream it more than cover it, because as I've mentioned quite a lot in this walkthrough, it's not my game, Bioshock 2. I like it, it's fun, but it's not really my game. And I've said I'm going to cover Infinite, but it's finding the time. At this moment in time, all I want to do is play Titanfall 2. But I kind of spite myself because I appreciate that not everybody loves Titanfall 2, so if I play too much of it, I'll be wanting to put too much of it on the channel. And there's a lot of people that want to see other things, so I have to balance it. So as much as every part of my body's like, Chris, get on, play it, I've got to moderate it with other things. Hence why I'm doing this commentary right now, because I did want to really just get on Titanfall. And it's one of those things where fitting in Bioshock 2 and Bioshock Infinite is going to be kind of a tough sell, because the videos do decently because people quite like Bioshock, but there's no real need for them, there's no real command for them, especially the second game. The second game was very easy, even on the harder difficulties, even doing like the brass balls if you were to do that. And I don't believe that they've added any kind of difficulty to that one, so it's, you know, demand for walkthroughs is the biggest thing that's missing from YouTube. As we take on a Houdini slice here and pick up the boots. And if you're not too sure what I mean for it, it's because games are getting easier, there's no real need to be guided through them, and there's a lot of people who just don't believe in being guided through them at all. I got a really interesting comment quite a long time ago where a guy was like, I don't see the point in using these videos to be shown these strategies. You know, the whole point of the challenge of the difficulty is figuring these strategies out yourself. And as much as I commend the guy, and I agree with him, you know, it'd make what I do pretty invalid if people didn't. And I suppose that's when you realise just how many people do. There are a lot of people who won't even try a game unless they know that they have this safety net backup of a guide or of some kind of achievement list, you know, like a roadmap on those websites that help you get the achievements quickly. And it's interesting to see how people change the way they play to adhere to the way that we consume media now. Because when I was younger, you didn't really have the internet. At least I didn't. I got the internet in my room for the first time when I was 17. Imagine that. You know, there are people growing up now with internet on their phones when they're like 8. It's so different, but that wasn't something that was available for me at that point, and it made it very special. So when you played games were really difficult. Games were really cryptic, and a lot of the times you spent more time being stuck than you did ever succeeding. So when people come to these newer games where games are so accessible now and so very linear and very strict and very forceful on where to go, it's almost impossible to get lost outside of, you know, having those moments which we all do where we make the silly mistake of observation and we miss something and we end up wasting a lot of time, and it turns out all we had to do was press A on that door that we kept running up to but never pressing A. Everybody's had those moments, but those moments were the games when I was growing up. It was just a linear sequence of, what the fuck do I do? And you literally ran around every opportunity you could, mashing buttons on stuff to try and make something trigger. Because the triggers weren't as obvious, games weren't as forthcoming. You know, things were really, really difficult. And if you got used to that, and that's what you judge gaming from, the new stuff just doesn't have the same sting. And a lot of people who were challenging themselves with those competitive scores and playing those older games have gone on to multiplayer now, because multiplayer is where the challenge is, because going up against another human is the most difficult thing you can do in a game. And I appreciate there are those moments where you can have games where you're up against people who you're almost certain they don't know how to move both analogs at the same time, and they're constantly looking in the sky or looking at the ground. But they're the rare games, you know, sometimes they're the common games, but for the most, if you come up against a good player, you are using every tool that you have in your box, and you are bringing everything to the table to try and overcome another brain. And there is nothing there is as visceral and as cerebral as that, because it's like a chess match. It's like being in the Colosseum. You know, it's that live or death moment in a video game, admittedly, but it's fast, it's crazy, it's intense, and sometimes the better player wins, you know? And that's where a lot of things have gone towards. That's why multiplayer is such a big thing. And I can still understand people being single-player gamers, because I, for most, am a single-player gamer. I like challenging the engine. I like playing multiplayer with friends. I find myself being far too competitive to play a lot of multiplayer solo, because unless it's a game where you can carry your team, it's very difficult. And then those moments where you don't carry your team doesn't carry you. So I find myself getting quite stressed. And I don't really come to games to get stressed, and I can't help it because I am so very competitive, so I kind of force it on myself, and it can lead to not having the best time. And when you're playing a game, I always feel like you should be maximising your enjoyment of it. And nowadays, with there being so many games, and so many games copying from everything else, and so many games feeling so similar, it can be very difficult to feel like you're investing the same amount of time and getting the same amount of fun. Like, I remember enjoying almost every moment of playing games, and because I play them so much now, probably don't feel the same, even though I am having fun, but it's a different type of fun. And have you ever had that moment where you notice something and it just makes you laugh, or it makes you giggle like a little girl? Because that's what gaming's all about, those moments. And I do find nowadays, as the games get better, they become a little bit more soulless, and you don't have those moments of just genuine awe and fun. And it doesn't mean that they don't exist, and it doesn't mean that you can't have them, because everybody is different, of course. It's just me personally, I find it takes longer and longer and longer to get to one of those moments, because everything is so, you know, very underwhelming to me. And I don't know if that's the game's fault, or if it's my expectations' fault, and just the fact that I play too much. I really don't know. But when you do get those moments, I think you have to hold on to them because they have to be cherished. And I talk a lot recently about Titanfall 2, you're probably blue in the face. But that's a game that's given me that feeling recently, that just the sheer joy. And joy is underrated, dude. It's such a great feeling. Before that, it was God Hand. Because God Hand, once it starts making sense, goes from being incredibly frustrating and rage-inducing to really, really fun and frustrating and rage-inducing. And the fun part matters. It helps. And a lot of people ask me, do you think that the walkthroughs affect the way that you consume games and your enjoyment of games? And I often answer no, but there's definitely a part of it that's changed the way that I approach games, because I find myself dropping games much quicker than I used to. I used to be much more attentive to new releases, whereas nowadays, a lot of the times, because I am covering a lot of things, I move between them quite rapidly. And there are moments when I wish I could go back and just play one, but you know, sometimes you've got to do what you feel like is necessary for other reasons rather than personal enjoyment. That's one of those things that our buddy Darkside Phil seems to not really realising. If you're going to complain every single pre-stream about there being too many games to cover, either don't play all the games or work for more than 3 hours a day, you lazy git. You know, I just don't understand this idea. A lot of people can be criticised for playing games for large periods of time. You see it all along. But is it any less helpful than spending 8 hours in a pub drinking? You know, just because one of these involves other human beings and the other one involves other human beings over headsets doesn't mean that it means more. And I always find it interesting. Like, I could be out, you know, stealing cars, selling meth, but I'm playing video games. It's helping my brain function. It's helping my hand-eye coordination. It's teaching me problem-solving skills. But there are still those people that like to lament it. By the way, guys, this is part 1 of 2 parts of this game that I hate, because apparently Proving Grounds is the section where you're guiding the little sister. It is not Point Prometheus. Point Prometheus is merely becoming a big daddy. So, yeah, the end of this game, I don't like. I didn't realise that it was 2 sections, but it is. And there is the warning telling me I'm not strong enough. You need Adam from them to become more powerful. Sorry, game. I'm good. I'm so good, I'm gonna shit on the last boss. And I didn't think I would, because I couldn't remember if he was challenging. And I've never beat Atlas before on Survivor difficulty, so I was expecting a nightmare. Turns out, just as crap as he always was, the strange blue-pink Powerpuff Man. You know, he's like a weird Power Ranger, a bit like the Tick, isn't he? Or Captain Dr. Manhattan, is that his name? The dude from Watchmen. Suffice to say, he's a bitch, and we're going to stomp him. And if you need any help, my videos will hopefully be there for you. So thank you for watching, and you take care now.